In the spring of 1945, as American forces pushed deeper into Germany, GI crews encountered the German SDKFZ-7 half-tracks, vehicles that had once towed 88mm guns, hauled artillery across the frozen mud of the Russian front, and symbolized the mechanical strength of the Wehrmacht. Soldiers who had seen these vehicles abandoned on roadsides or captured in small numbers finally had the chance to climb into the driver's seat and experience them firsthand, and what they discovered was both impressive and alarming. The SDKFZ-7s were massive, meticulously engineered machines, powered by Maybach HL62 and HL64 six-cylinder engines that produced 140 horsepower, roared to life with authority, and with their distinctive overlapping road wheels, could grip the muddiest terrain with astonishing traction. When hitched to heavy artillery, these tractors pulled their loads effortlessly, seemingly living up to the legend of German engineering excellence. For the first day, American crews were awestruck. The vehicles felt like locomotives under their control, steady, powerful, and capable of feats their own M3 half-tracks could only dream of. The M3, produced in the tens of thousands, was a reliable, simple-to-maintain, and fuel-efficient vehicle, carrying 12 soldiers or towing light artillery over 220 miles on a 60-gallon tank, approximately 3.7 miles per gallon on roads, dropping slightly off-road. But the SDKFZ-7, with its slightly larger 57-gallon tank, consumed fuel at rates that made its operational range almost meaningless, often requiring refueling after less than 75 miles in combat conditions, with mud, snow, or heavy loads pushing consumption to catastrophic lows of 1 mile per gallon. Initially, American crews suspected mistakes. Perhaps the tanks were not full, perhaps the drivers were inexperienced, or perhaps they were using the vehicles incorrectly. But repeated testing, including controlled trials towing identical artillery loads over mixed terrain, confirmed the grim reality. The German vehicle's engines, transmissions, and overall design, optimized for power and reliability under all conditions, were fundamentally inefficient, and their excessive fuel consumption rendered even their remarkable capabilities operationally limited. American soldiers began documenting these findings, noting how convoys slowed dramatically to accommodate constant refueling, artillery units stalled without accompanying fuel trucks, and even Panther and Tiger tanks, tactically superior in armor and firepower, were immobilized far more frequently than Shermans because they required twice as much fuel for the same distances. The SDKFZ-7 became a symbol of Germany's logistical vulnerability, a machine designed for strength, yet crippled by the absence of a resource it could not survive without. The lessons were immediately visible on the battlefields. Supply columns observed that M3s could complete round-trip supply missions with fuel to spare, while SDKFZ-7s, Panther tanks, and other captured vehicles stalled mid-route or were abandoned, leaving artillery pieces and critical equipment stranded, sometimes within sight of the advancing front. Soldiers noted with dark humor the irony of these powerful machines stranded with empty tanks. In letters home, GIs described driving German half-tracks that seemed unstoppable, only to watch fuel gauges plummet and realize that raw engineering might impress, but could not replace fuel. Intelligence officers, analyzing captured equipment, confirmed the frontline observations. The Maybach engines consumed roughly 30% more fuel per horsepower than American White 160AX engines, due to design choices including low compression ratios, complex carburetors running rich, and transmissions geared for maximum torque rather than cruising efficiency. These findings had broader implications for understanding German military collapse. German vehicles had been designed under the assumption that fuel would always be available, drawing from synthetic fuel plants, captured oil fields in Romania, and the expectation of rapid victories that would bring new fuel supplies within reach. In practice, Allied bombing campaigns had destroyed synthetic fuel production, the Soviet advance had cut off Romanian oil, and Germany's logistics system was collapsing. The result was catastrophic. German panzer divisions were immobilized not by enemy fire, but by a lack of fuel. Artillery units could not reposition their guns, and half-tracks that could traverse mud and snow with ease were rendered useless because they could not move far enough to support infantry. These inefficiencies were starkly illustrated during the Battle of the Bulge, where the German offensive relied on the capture of Allied fuel dumps to sustain their advance. When those fuel stocks were defended or destroyed, Panther tanks, Tiger tanks, and SDKFZ-7s ground to a halt, leaving the offensive to collapse within days. Captured soldiers consistently confirmed this reality. Units were ordered to advance, tried to advance, but stopped because fuel never arrived. Vehicles sat idle, guns remained silent, and the war was effectively being lost at the logistical level. The Americans, by contrast, had designed a sustainable war machine. From oil wells in Texas and California, crude oil was refined, shipped across the Atlantic, offloaded in France, and transported hundreds of miles to the front, feeding M3 half-tracks, Shermans, and other vehicles reliably. Every gallon mattered, and engines were designed to maximize the distance traveled per unit of fuel, ensuring that frontline units could operate continuously, even across vast distances. Post-war analysis at Aberdeen Proving Ground confirmed what soldiers had experienced firsthand. The SDKFZ-7, while sophisticated and robust, was optimized for raw power rather than efficiency. The transmission ratios, engine timing, and fuel injection systems ensured reliability, but demanded extraordinary amounts of gasoline. German vehicles consistently consumed roughly double the fuel of their American counterparts for the same operational tasks, a vulnerability that rendered tactical advantages irrelevant when fuel supplies were constrained. This fundamental asymmetry between German and American approaches to mechanized warfare shaped post-war vehicle design. The M59 and M113 armored personnel carriers were explicitly designed with fuel efficiency in mind, reflecting lessons learned from the mud and snow of Europe, and emphasizing the principle that mobility and sustainability are more critical than raw power. The SDKFZ-7, once a symbol of German mechanical mastery, became instead a lesson in logistical reality. Powerful, capable, and tactically superior in isolated metrics, yet unable to function effectively in a prolonged war of attrition because it could not be reliably supplied. For American soldiers operating these captured vehicles, the lesson was immediate, visceral, and unforgettable. The Germans had built machines for a short, victorious campaign, but in a long war, where fuel was scarce and distances were vast, brilliance in engineering could not substitute for practicality, and the ability to keep vehicles running, supplied, and mobile ultimately determined the outcome of modern mechanized warfare. Every abandoned Panther, every empty-tanked SDKFZ-7, and every halted artillery tractor was a reminder that the collapse of the German war machine had as much to do with fuel efficiency and logistics as it did with strategic bombing or numerical superiority, and that in the calculus of war, power without sustainability was a fatal flaw that the Americans had exploited to decisive effect.